Hello, welcome to another episode of Rando Rob. This is the YouTube video series slash audio podcast where I, Rob, pull out rando items from my collection. However, did I come up with that name, Rando Rob? I don't know. On today's show, it's not really a show, on today's video slash podcast, I was just out in the garage not too long ago, and I found something that I have owned since the early 80s. Now, technically, I'm not sure when I became the owner because this is an item that belonged to my sister. My sister got this item for Christmas, and there was one of those. It was one of those Christmases, and I don't remember the exact year. 1980, 81, 82, somewhere in there. But it was one of those years where I got a present and my sister got a present, and I immediately began playing with her present, and she began playing with my present. The present I got was a Mr. Microphone. Now, I don't know if you had to be of a certain age to remember Mr. Microphone, but you're probably familiar with different devices that will broadcast onto a frequency that can be picked up by a radio. You may have seen these with, I had an MP3 player that would do that, or an adapter for the car for the MP3 player, so you could tune into a particular AM radio station or low band FM station, maybe, and you would broadcast and it would pick it up. I see these real commonly these days in Christmas light displays. You drive through Christmas lights and it'll say, turn your radio to 88.7 or something like that. And you turn your dial all the way down and they'll be broadcasting Christmas music, and they'll have synchronized lights to the music that they're playing, and you will be able to hear that music in your car. And probably the other implementation of that you might be familiar with is drive-ins. Many drive-ins do that, where you go to the drive-in and it says tune your car radio to this frequency, and then you can hear the movie at the drive-in. So that's what Mr. Microphone was. It was a handheld mic, and you tuned your radio to a certain frequency, and then you could sing and your voice would come out of the radio. It was like a very, very early version of probably of karaoke, I suppose. But I got that for Christmas, and then my sister immediately loved it. She went playing with that or whatever, and my sister got something that I immediately fell in love with, played with it for many years, and at some point it just stopped belonging to my sister and started belonging to me. I don't know if there's any official transfer of ownership, but I still have it 40 something years later. So technically, I'm going to say it's mine now. And it is, if you saw the title of the show or the video, you may have an inkling, but this is it. His arms are kind of stuck to him. We'll talk about his arms and legs, but this is a puppet of Animal from the Muppets. Beep, 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 beep. So let's talk very briefly about the construction. Well, let's talk about Animal. Animal is obviously an original Muppet from the Muppet Shows. He is the drummer in the show's house band, the Electric Mayhem. And Animal is known for being crazy, and he is in all the Muppet movies, and he sometimes accidentally eats things instead of plays with them. Don't you do that, Animal? Yeah. So as a kid, I was really into puppets. I really liked puppets, and I put on puppet shows in my bedroom and did different things. And when I say I was really into puppets, I had some puppets. You know, I was a kid that had some puppets. That's as far as it went. I didn't do public puppetry or anything like that. I was just a guy that had some puppets. And so, anyway, I'm being stupid here with the animal puppet, making him move around. When you're a kid, when I was a kid growing up in the 70s and the early 80s, there was no bigger puppets than the Muppets and the Muppet Show. And that would be probably what got my original interest in puppets and also ventriloquism. So let's take a look at the build of the animal puppet here. And so, unlike a lot of puppets, what we get here is the entire animal body from his head to his feet. And if we look at the feet and the arms and the body, we will see that they are just kind of rolled over pieces of fabric. Now, I don't remember if they had more stuffing. I don't think they did when I was younger, but they are very flat. So his body is very flat. His stomach is flat. His arms are flat. Every part of him is basically flat from the neck down. Now, he has his feet have this kind of weird construction. I'm going to show you here. It's kind of hard when I'm also have the puppet, but the feet kind of splay out almost like a chicken's foot. Like there's a little back part and then there's a front part. And so if you were to set him up on the ground, you could kind of arrange his feet where it would look like he was standing. But they don't stick to anything and they don't have a lot of support. So I think it would more be like in a puppet show. You know, if you raised the puppet higher or lower, you could see that animal had a body. He has on his typical drawstring pants. But let's talk about these hands. So the hands are just cut out of felt, and they have 3 fingers and a thumb on each hand. But then in the palm, they have a little piece of Velcro. And so what that was for was you would take animal and you could stick his hands to his own body to kind of pose him. And I think it makes it look like there's more to the arms than there really is, right? So you could, kind of put him in little poses and things like that. But now let's talk about the head. The head, the inside of the mouth is a hard molded plastic. The nose is hard plastic that is squeezable, but it's not like a clown nose that you would squeeze. And then his eyeballs are one piece of molded plastic. So you can see right here, if you're looking at the video, he's got a molded tongue up in there, but it's very hard plastic. Now, it moves just like a normal puppet moves. You move with your hand and your thumb, you make the mouth open and close. And but there is something above where your fingers rest on the top. There is a little plastic, it almost feels like a ramp, like a lever. And when you push down on the lever, it makes his eyebrows go up and down. So it's slightly more advanced than a very basic puppet. It certainly doesn't have all the things that you would expect in a high-end like ventriloquist doll, like the eyes don't move back and forth and anything like that. But he does blink. And so that was something that none of my other puppets did, was that he could blink. Now, you can't really blink and open a mouth at the same time, because to make it blink, you have to squeeze down with your top fingers, and you're getting that pressure from your thumb, which is pressing up against the lower mouth. So not really blink while you talk capabilities, but that's okay. Who cares? So anyway, that's kind of the story of Animal. Now, he does have this wild fur hair that I just showed this thing to my wife, and she says, wow, looks like Animal has the mange. So maybe the hair looked better on his head at some point in time. It still looks okay to me, but I do see that it's a little worn and slightly matted. Now, the back of the puppet has this vertical slit, and he's kind of wearing a half shirt thing, and it kind of hides a lot of where your hand goes, but you have this slit. Now, what I used to do, I don't have one in here anymore, but I would take like a 2-liter or 3-liter, like a used bottle of Coke or of pop of some sort, and fill it up with water and put it on the desk, and it's just about the right height where you can kind of put it in there, and he will rest on the top of that bottle, and then you can kind of arrange his feet, and then you can get him to kind of get in some sort of standing position, and that was a fun way to display Animal. So, About, gosh, I don't remember, let's say 10 years ago. It might be a little longer than 10 years ago, but let's say 10 years ago. I was cleaning out my house and I was really, I'm going to talk about nostalgia for just a minute. There are things that I absolutely loved as a kid. Absolutely loved. And some of those things I saved for my children because I knew that my children, I wanted to gift them to my children so that my children would love them as much as I loved them. And what I found out is that some things worked and some things did not work. Some things did not translate to my children's childhood and did not speak to them the same way that they spoke to me. So, for example, I well, here's an example. I had a larger Lego collection than most people, probably anybody you know, unless you know somebody who has Lego in their nickname. Like, I had a 30-gallon tub completely filled with Legos. We're talking, literally thousands of dollars worth of Legos. Some of that was my personal collection as a kid, and then I bought a couple of large collections of Legos over the years and saved all these for my children. And I would say my children played with those Legos probably less than 5 times. When I was a kid, I played Legos every day. And it wasn't the only thing that I did, but it was one of the things that I really enjoyed doing. And I would put a bed sheet down on my floor, and then I would pour my Legos out, and I would play with the Legos. And when you were done, you'd take up the 4 corners of the bed sheet and kind of put it in your tub, and then you pulled the sheet out, and all the Legos went back into the tub. So I had this large tub full of Legos, and I bought for one of his birthdays, I bought my son a SpongeBob. It was I think it was the Krusty Krab restaurant, I think, a Lego thing, and he enjoyed that because that was something he could relate to, SpongeBob or whatever. But as far as all my old Legos, it just didn't interest my kids, and this was a thing that I had. That I owned, when I was a young child, and I had hung on to for 30 years out of love to give to my kids. And then my kids didn't necessarily want them. And so there was a part of me that was really kind of hurt by that. And I wasn't, I wasn't upset with my kids or hurt by my kids, but it was almost felt like you personally are being rejected in a way, and so there were a few things like that. And I think when you really stop to think about it, if I think about the things that my dad was into when he was a young kid, I mean, like Lincoln Logs and whatever toys, like a yo-yo maybe, or a slinky or something like that. Those things I wasn't super into when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like, you might go, oh, look, a yo-yo, and play with a yo-yo for a few minutes. But I had Atari, so I don't want to play with a yo-yo, And unfortunately, my kids, when my son was born, I had a PlayStation 3. So, getting my kids to be that interested in Legos, or unfortunately puppets, was kind of difficult, And so at one point when we were cleaning house, I basically took all of my puppets and donated them all, and I'm going to say all in air quotes, all to my kids' daycare. I took them all up and I said, is this something that the kids will play with, the younger kids or whatever? They were like, absolutely. The kids will love it. They will enjoy it. And so that's what happened. Now, it just so happened, and by the way, I would say 95% of the puppets. I mean, I probably, when I say puppets, I'm going to say I had a dozen puppets, you know. And I would say only two of those puppets did I have real nostalgic connections with. And one of those was a puppet that I got at the 1982 World's Fair. I remember at the time this puppet cost $100. It was not something that my family could necessarily afford or would afford. Not for a simple souvenir for a kid for going on a trip, but my aunt and uncle had gone on that same trip and they bought me the puppet. And I loved that puppet. I had wigs for that puppet, like Halloween wigs, where I would make it into different characters. I put on little puppet shows and I would use this puppet and reuse this puppet. So I definitely had a nostalgic connection to it. It's also a very well built puppet. I mean, it was $100 puppet in 1982, which would probably, I mean, it would probably be like a $200 or $250 puppet now or something. But I didn't have a need for it. My kids didn't want it. And so that went into the donate pile. It wasn't anything that was bringing me joy anymore. Now, I will say the only thing that saved Animal from that same fate was that Animal was not stored with all my other puppets. I have a collection of stuffed, I don't want to say stuffed animals, but like I have a Spike from Gremlins that is stuffed. I have some different pillows, like a Hershey's bar pillow and a Reese's pillow. And these were all things that were in my movie room that I had on display in my movie room. And I had Animal on display with those things. I think I have a stuffed Smurf maybe in that collection. I don't know. But Animal was in that tub with all those things. So when it came time to donate all the puppets, Animal wasn't with those puppets. And so that's probably why he got the stay of execution and why I still have Animal. I believe Animal is the only puppet that I own. Now, I still have a lot of those other stuffed Hershey bar, like those type of things. I have a Hershey's Kiss that's stuffed. And those are all things that were in my movie room. And I haven't really done the kind of decorating in my movie room like I wanted to do. It's still pretty barren with blank walls, and I kind of like it that way a little bit. But I have some movie theater, movie related items and things that belong in a home theater that I think I'm going to end up putting out there. And so Animal may make that cut. He is obviously not a movie. I mean, Animal is in Muppet movies, but when you see Animal, he doesn't necessarily represent movies to most people. He kind of represents the Muppet Show, but he's a fun thing. And I do have a small area up here where I have the large Bumble that I've showed, the Abominable Snowman, and I have a Yoda backpack and a couple things. And so it's possible Animal might end up living in here somewhere. But yeah, so this is definitely the only puppet, I believe, that I still own. I'm hoping my sister doesn't want it back. If she does, I'm going to buy a second one. I'm sure you can still find these on eBay. I do have a couple of other Animal dolls, but they're not puppets. They're just dolls or stuffed figures, stuffed animal type figures that resemble Animal. But this is the only one I have that is a puppet. So there you go. There is the Animal puppet that I own, and it has been in the collection since the early 1980s, and is yet another thing that I will. Someone will have to figure out what to do with when I die, because I don't see me getting rid of him anytime soon. Thanks for checking out another episode of Rando Rob. I'll have some older episodes of Rando Rob in the feed over the next few days. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, which is a playlist that's under youtube.com/Rob O'Hara, you can watch this video, all the past videos, and the upcoming videos, Retro Rob. God, I just did it. It's just said retro. I've been doing so good at saying Rando Rob. I just said Retro Rob. They're retro videos of Rando Rob. That's the problem. Or if you're listening on the podcast feed, then those will show up on the feed. And Rando Rob has its own feed, which is on iTunes. I believe I just added it to Amazon. So you can probably find it there, or you can just listen to the Rob O'Hara main feed and you'll get this show and all my other shows. Thanks to all my Patreon supporters and listeners, and especially you. Thanks for taking time out of your day to check out the Animal Puppet. I'll talk to you soon.